Thank you, Nishok. Good evening, everyone. My name is Prabhu. I'm from Bangalore. So excited to speak to you all this evening. I basically work in the IT industry. I work as a senior program manager for an IT company, and I've been in the IT industry for close to 25 years now. And I'm also a wellness enthusiast. Part of Wellness Atlas, we have featured coaches, and we're so excited about helping more people in terms of achieving their health. And today, as Nishant rightly introduced, I'm very excited to talk about this topic because this is something which is very close to my heart, and I'm sure this is something which is close to your heart as well, because we are going to talk about heart today, right? So the next few minutes, how about having a heart to heart talk, right? So, I would request you to be, very attentive. Probably we can have some questions exchanged, some quiz exchanged, and then, we'll have some kind of, interactive session. So let's get started. So let me quickly share my screen. 1 minute. All right, wonderful. So I hope all of you are able to see my screen. So today we are going to talk about the rising threat of heart attacks among the young. So let's understand this one, right? So this webinar, see, first thing is this webinar isn't meant to scare you all, but and neither, it is going to be an offer that, it's going to have a one size fits all solution for heart health. My goal is simpler and perhaps more powerful. So I would like to share some insights that help you recognize the everyday mistakes we often overlook. Because when it comes to your heart, what you can ignore matter more than what you know. So let's get started, right? So let's get started with a small quiz or a myth. So can you please chat, right? Heart attacks are due to genetics. What do you all think? Is it a myth or a fact? Maybe I would request all the first timers to type in your answer. So what do you think? Heart attack is due to genetics. Do you think it is a myth or a fact? Okay. So thanks for your responses. We'll park this question, and I'll the next slide is also going to be followed by another question. So I need your answers. So again, little bit of exercise to your fingers. Which one do you think is the most dangerous for your heart? Right? It's a very common thing, right? The minute we look at this image, I'm sure all of you are looking at the image, your eyes go straight to that, nice burger or maybe a glass of alcohol or a cigarette. But you know what? The real danger isn't that. The real danger is the chair itself, right? How many of you have heard, sitting is the smoking, the next smoking, right? So, I mean, how many of you how many of you typing the number of hours that you sleep, or typing the number of hours that you sit, apart from your sleep? 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, right? Today, unfortunately, all of us have ended up sitting more time than doing the other work, or rather, we keep doing work only by sitting, right? So sedentary lifestyle is one of the biggest silent contributors to heart disease today, right? Hours of sitting. Maybe it could be at work, or you're stuck in traffic or on the couch, and which is actually leading to poor oxygen delivery. So how many of you heard about this something called VO2 max? So because of the sedentary lifestyle, what is happening is our VO2 max is actually getting lowered. So what happens when this VO2 max gets reduced? So there is basically a poor delivery of oxygen to our entire body. Second thing is, it's a very common condition, insulin resistance. So there is an increase in the insulin resistance. Third thing is your arterial stiffness. And people are actually experiencing early fatigue. So can you imagine, just by sitting for a long time, we have been able to attract so many things that we don't want to. And also, study shows that 50% of the heart attacks since 2020 in India occurred in adults below 40. I mean, it is just shocking, actually, right? Especially, during COVID time, our life became very, very sedentary. In fact, COVID has actually paused the world, but many hearts haven't restarted the rhythm, right? Sitting too long is like kind of, pressing the mute on your circulation. And the studies also have showed that prolonged sitting, especially more than 8 hours per day, can actually double the risk of heart attack and stroke, even if you exercise later in the day, right? So, if sedentary lifestyle is so dangerous, if sitting is so dangerous, right? Can I tomorrow start doing exercise, like, suddenly getting into an overworking or something like that? Maybe, not sure, but you know what? Most of the time it is not recommended, right? In what are the cases it is not recommended for you to do kind of, overworking and things like that? One, if you are already a sedentary person, right? You have been sitting for so many days and suddenly you think about it, okay, I have to get into my, active routine. You getting from a sedentary direct shift to a HIIT, that is high intensity workout, it is not recommended, right? Because what is happening is you're overtraining daily but no recovery days. Second thing is you're excessively sweating. You're working out so much, you're excessively sweating, but you know what? It is actually leading to hydration, right? So leading to a dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. Third thing is sometimes we tend to ignore warnings. The body is subtly giving some signals. We tend to ignore those warnings. Like sometimes, people get chest pain or dizziness or breathlessness, right? So sometimes, we ignore that. And the third thing is, in case if you have a undiagnosed heart disease, right? Because we should not assume things that, you know, all these days I do not have any issues, right? From tomorrow onwards, I'm going to get on to a excessive workout, but that actually, leads to, some kind of, casualty, right? Have you seen, do you know this guy? This guy's name is Jim Fix. In fact, this man who actually made America run, and unfortunately he died of a heart attack while jogging, right? It doesn't mean that all the people who are jogging these days should stop, or you should not start your jogging. Just that he had arteries which were severely blocked, right? So that is what is going to happen if we do not, if you have an undiagnosed heart disease and suddenly if you get on to a kind of overworking and things like that, may not be a good option. But most of the time, tell me something. In case if you are feeling kind of discomfort in your physical and things like that, what do generally people do? What is our human tendency? There's always somebody to help us, right? So that's what most of us do, right? We immediately open our tab or a mobile or a laptop and then say, you know what, I have this. What can I do? But you know what? That is the most dangerous thing that all of us can do, because we Google doesn't know our health condition, right? It is something like this. Let me play a quick video for you guys.
This is the end. Hold your breath and count to 10.
So do you want that kind of response from Google, right? All you did is, the poor guy just typed in, I have some chest pain, and the famous Google is saying, you know what, this is the end. Just keep count till 10 and you're done, right? So I mean, definitely that is not a good idea, right? But you know what basically happens when people Google their concerns is, it basically increases their anxiety, right? Often it leads to worst case scenarios, or sometimes what happens is it can be a delayed medical help, right? The concern would be really happening with that person, but just that they say, okay, Google did not diagnose me properly, maybe I'm not right now it is not a serious thing for us. That is also a very, very misleading thing, right? So some people rely too heavily on online info and delay seeking real help, or maybe they just ignore it. So especially the silent heart attacks, right, especially for common and diabetes, can go unnoticed because people expect dramatic chest pain, right? So what are the other factors which basically leads to an heart attack, right? Overthinking, right? How many of you are doing, or maybe all of us are, getting into this stage, right? Anything that happens, oh, you know what? We get into that overthinking. It quietly wears down your heart, right? How many of you have, told to yourself, right? Did I say something wrong in that meeting, right? What if my manager didn't like my presentation? Very common thing for all working professionals. Or you're just wondering, once you come back home, should I have replied to that email in a different way, right? Or would people would have been offended? See, a lot of times in reality, there won't be any issues, but it is something like this, right? So the sometimes the biggest obstacles are the ones that we create. We think that okay, this could be wrong, that could be wrong, but most of the cases, trust me, it is really not, that, something that we have done wrong, right? And this is one extreme. People get into an overthinking mode. But you know what? There is another extreme also. People have a very laid back attitude, right? They feel that they are a Superman. Nothing is going to happen to me, right? So are they really invincible, or are they just ignoring the warning signs, right? I'm sure all of you would have some friends, or it could be, yourself, right? We all believe that we are invincible, too busy to slow down, right? Too strong to worry about, right? Too healthy to even check, right? But you know what? Even a Superman had something called kryptonite, right? So for us, it's neglect. Negligence is something, which is a big thing, right? Skipping our checkups, brushing off our warning signs, right? Telling ourselves, you know what? I'm absolutely fine, right? Nothing happens to me. I don't have any genetic issues, right? I'm a vegetarian. I have heard people, saying that. But you know what? That's not bravery. That's just a blind faith, right? So let me ask you one thing, right? When was the last time you did your blood work, right? If you have not done at least 6 months or 1 year, right? I think it is the best time for you to do it, because you really don't know how your body is actually behaving, right? So the blood work is a very first thing that you could actually do it for yourself, right? Let's move on. What are the other factors which is going to affect our heart health? Next thing is stress. Everybody are going through the stress, right? Stress is like something like you're attending an interview, or probably preparing for an examination. Suddenly you see that sweaty palms, right? Your heart rate is increasing, maybe you have a dry mouth. You know what, all these are basically done by something called a sympathetic nervous system, right? So there's a nervous system which activates your fight or a flight mode, right? But you know what? The other side is once you start calming down, once you have the deep breath, you have your parasympathetic, nervous system that gets activated, right? It is a kind of, cool down thing, right? But the problem is we are so caught up with things like, the stress is actually becomes a chronic, right? So that's where over a period of time, it leads to heart attack. And the next big thing is your anger, right? I'm sure all of us are, angry at some point in time. But one thing what we need to realize is anger isn't just a moment. It's a storm that lives behind the pressure. Every moment of anger squeezes the heart like a fist tightening around your heart race, right? So there are multiple ways you could actually calm down your anger and then have a better health. One of the other things where we generally ignore is your dental health, right? It is going to be a silent leak, from your smile to arteries, because most of us think that dental health has a cosmetic thing, something about your smiles and fresh breath. But beneath that surface, your gum disease can silently, send harmful bacteria into bloodstream, which eventually will inflame your arteries. Again, another question is, when was the last time you did your dental checkup, right? uh, Maybe you were forced to visit a dentist because of your RCT and things like that. But have you ever gone for a annual or a 6 months dental checkup? If not, maybe this is a great time for you to do that, just to check how things are, and so that we can avoid any kind of surprises. Next comes your sneaky dietary habits, right? When it comes to food, I think that is your maximum amount of contribution to your health. And your late night eating, your weekend binge eating, right? What is happening during this weekend binge eating and cheat days, right? There is a sudden rush of high sugar, high fatty foods, which is actually creating a lot of inflammation, right? And over reliance on fruit juice, right? Because any form of fruit juice, it lacks fiber and it has got a lot of sugar in it, right? So this is something which actually spikes up the sugar, and which leads to a lot of fat accumulation and also leads to something called insulin resistance. So over a period of time, what is really happening to our heart is a healthy normal heart is actually become a heart which is surrounded by fat, right? It is something which is very dangerous. In fact, even doctors sometimes do not help us understand or help us become aware of it, right? So visceral fat, it is called epicardial fat, which basically surrounds the heart. And since this fat direct is having a direct contact with the coronary arteries, that's where there is a lot of impact, and which leads to heart health, right? A heart attack. So how do we basically really understand if a person is having insulin resistance or not? Some of the very easy way is, just if you're a man, just measure your waist circumference and make sure if it is less than 40. If it is greater than 40, maybe that is a clear indication of your indication of having an insulin resistance. And likewise for women, it is about 35 inches, right? So next important pillar, your sleep, right? So how many of you have sleep, right? When I say sleep, deep sleep, at least about 7 to 8 hours, right? Not many people, right? Because in this fast-paced, demanding world, I mean, not sure if all of us are able to have about 7 to 8 hours sleep. But you know what? We often think that sleep is just a way to recharge our energy. But actually, you know what? When a body, especially your heart, gets the repair and reset, and when you do not sleep well, your body stays a kind of silent stress mode. It's like your internal alarm system, right, which has been never switching off, and eventually it becomes goes into that fight or a flight mode, which we just talked about, the sympathetic nervous system. And over a period of time, it puts a tremendous pressure on your heart, and then eventually people get into this heart attack and things like that. So these are some of the obvious ones. But you know what, there are a few things which may not be able to easily identifiable, and these are the hidden triggers for our heart attack, right? So what are those basically? One is your toxins, right? Toxins are enormous these days. One, it could be, for example, so there's something called forever chemicals. All your non-stick kadai, all your non-stick pans are basically made out of this material, which is kind of stain resistant, linked to arterial stiffness and things like that. Second is usage of your aluminum, right? All your cookwares, whatever that you're using. I mean, if you're constantly been using this aluminum vessels, right there, they're a big contributor of aluminum. Third is your carcinogens, right? Any form of smoke, tobacco smoke, or even usage of air fryers, microwave ovens, or food which is basically prepared in charcoal fire. All those basically leads to carcinogens. It's another toxins, that is basically affecting our heart health. Next is your microplastics, right? Watch out your water bottle, watch out your containers, your heavy metals coming through sometimes fish and other things, right? And some of the toxic medications, right? If somebody is on a psychiatric medications or antidepressant, right there are heavy toxins that get consumed in our body, right? So toxins is something which has to be taken care over a period of time, otherwise eventually it leads to your heart health. Another silent one is, all of us have this at home, right? And it's a kind of radiation, right? So much of radiation that happens, right? But unfortunately, we cannot stay away from it. We all need mobile, we all need laptops, we all need Wi-Fi connection. But you know what? How about switching off in the night? Because if you are basically sleeping in a room where you have Wi-Fi connection, strong signal, if you have a mobile connection and things like that, you know what? Those radiations affect your heart health, right? Very dangerous, right? And then let's move on to the final thing, right? Your association actually matters, right? Your social circle, your habits more than you realize. Because when you are basically surrounded by people who binge or skip movement or normalize, right, unhealthy choices and things like that, it basically silently rewires your own behavior. I have a very small video that all of us can see in terms of how important it is to have a right kind of association.
Every day now, for a year, for a year. And said, you know, on the way for to me, our name, and together must we follow like a sea to the depth of the soil, buried deep in the ground of the rain. I can hear you call my name, held the sound. I am lost in a rainbow, no rainbow this time. I am lost in a rainbow, no rainbow this time. Every day now.
So I believe, coming back to this association, right? Coming back to this Hello WQ week on week, it is an absolute change of, association, right? So let's come back to the question that we asked initially, right? So what do you all think now, right? Does heart attack is just due to genetics or is it because of lifestyle? I'm sure now you should be able to, answer that, right? Yes, genes basically load the gun, but habits actually pull the trigger, right? Nothing, I mean, you know what? Nothing happens suddenly. The body keeps a score and one day basically demands payment, right? And, I'm going to share something which is close to my heart, right? About someone who means the world to me, right? Years ago, this person was actually diagnosed with something called ischemic heart disease, a condition where blood flow to the heart is restricted due to clogged arteries. Living in Bangalore, we consulted multiple cardiologists, and every time we go to a specialist, the same routine, the same blood test, right? Prescription follow up after 3 months. But the cycle actually went on for many many years, right? Eventually, we turned to Ayurveda, we turned to Unani medicine and things like that, but nothing worked out. And then the moment the feared the most, right? The doctors actually told, what, this person can survive only for about 2 to 3 years. Our hearts were basically shattered during that time, right? Now, as I sit here sharing with you, I'm actually filled with gratitude to God and to my coaches and to this incredible community. Because of this, right? Um, you know, this person has actually become medicine free for last 15 years and thriving, right? And that is none other than my mom, right? So these are the health issues basically she was able to reverse. She was able to reverse her heart disease, arthritis, pre-diabetes condition, and you know what? She's been medicine free for almost about 15 years, right? How did this happen? Just by changing habits, right? So one last question to you all. What is the most important thing that you all feel in this image? It could be a private jet, or it could be an yacht, or it could be anything, right? But you know what? The most important thing is you put yourself into that position, right? So when it comes to you, why not, invest that thing on your health? Why do you want to take chance, right? Thankfully, this community has been, guiding so many people for so many years, right? So how about, I mean, if you have invested on a beautiful Saturday evening to listen to something, I'm sure you're somebody who's interested in taking care of your health, right? And my final thoughts. Let's go back to the point where we actually started, right? Heart attacks don't happen suddenly. They happen silently over a period of time, right? So with that, I am done. Take care of your. Thank you.